We are going to talk about data policing and the slicing of data, particularly in the advent of deploying the generative technologies, whether even perhaps at the stage of 5G, 6G, and the others, so that the latency period can be, or I would rather say there's no latency period, it's more into the real time. That's what the algorithm which I have developed and filed is working in that direction. And the use case studies are working out perfectly for that. So I'll wait and put myself on mute and look into the data sets, and we'll discuss this in detail for next couple of maybe 15-20 minutes. Let's see. So we are going to discuss about the chaos testing, how the chaos testing can be done in the data. Discuss about the chaos testing, how the chaos test. And perhaps even before going into detail, I'll talk about very simple stuff. What to negate in terms of the data understanding. Perhaps when we are providing the real-time generative technology on a use case basis as to when it is required. So in the simplest recipe of understanding the engineering behind the chaos is to fortify the data. That is something which cannot be neglected. But if the fortification is right and we know exactly what we need to negate, it becomes very easy. The resources, whether in terms of electricity, whether the other resources, and even the usage of the perhaps the hardware, the load is very low. For that, the algo has to be in a format which is negating everything. So I'll give you one use case example here, very simple. Say for example, there's a third party person, and that third party person data set has nothing to do with uh, even birth of date should not be taken into consideration, because there are many folks who change their date of birth according to Astro. They change time of birth. So even the birth certificate data set has to be taken as null and void. The entry point at the school level again has to be seen in terms of how many times that particular third person has changed their names over the years. I have changed my name a couple of times officially. Then what has to be negated is, forget about the lineage, forget about the clan, in terms of just to have a very clean data set and see how these individuals, or I would say inhabitants of the internet, have utilized internet for what purpose, and accordingly the internet should be provided in terms of we need to sanitize the internet. We cannot have corruption over the internet. We cannot allow um, the cyber kind of drills which have been done or being orchestrated by different parties to come into play. There have to be different checkpoints so that this is negated to a level where the inhabitant of the internet doesn't lose their whatever they have built, in any case whatsoever, whether it's an inhabitant, whether it's group of individuals, whether the person is getting into a partnership agreement without even knowing that partnership will work or not. Because right now, due to this internet, there's a persona of every individual. Most of the persona, I would rather say, are artificial persona, in terms of it is not their true identity. They try to mimic the identity of the person with whom they want to interact, and accordingly they sign off their online identity. And we are seeing that through these applications which have been discussed, that the app model for the longest time has been broken. Then we need to identify the prerequisite. We need to negate the um, parameter in terms of the school marks, because any third, fourth, fifth party trying to understand the intelligence of that particular individual, that itself data set is negated. Whether the individual inhabitant is from a particular family, school, all these things hold no value. What holds value is the historical data set. And once that historical data set is confirmed, then that data set has to be pushed in a manner whereby that data set can be utilized to get to the next level of understanding of the internet in terms of the protocols. Um, One needs to identify the scope and the landing zone. And this particular case, which I just procured here, is um, so there's one option where there's a full 5G SA core, which is still physical in terms of CU/RU slash DU, which is physical, everything else is CNF. Then there's another option where the control plane is AMF, SNF, UDM, PCF, AUSF, which is cheaper. And the landing zone is you have cloud account, subscription, and separate VPC or VNet, so the production of DNS and IPM cannot be reached even by mistake. I'll give you one example here. When we were called upon by China government, the first thing when we reached our destination, we were told to get the CDNs installed so that we could just log on to the different websites and get things done in terms of understanding the ethos of the big data, because big data is more to do with the historical data set. And once you see the historical data set, it is very evident that this climate change right now is real. And the nature, which is nature, that doesn't mean the nature of the person. I'm talking about nature, the natural inhabitant, which is the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the whole ethos of the food chain. That has to be taken into consideration, and the first alarm already has been triggered. Then, in particularly, if I have to look into this, one can create, obviously we talked about color coding. Even in China we were color coded, for that matter, even where we need to sit it was color coded. who would the person sitting next to me or the enterprise sitting next to me was already decided. It was very pre-decided and done in a very controlled manner. So the point of contention here is we need to have these canopy kind of situation, whereby, say for example, there is one particular augmented reality where the reality is of a forest, and there are individuals or inhabitant of that forest who are trying to enter the forest to explore the forest in the best possible manner. The first line of defense would be to have a canopy there, map out the canopy, stay in the canopy, understand the habitat nearby, and once you are understood, or once the whole the selected people or the selected individuals understand that commune, then only you move forward. That is one way of going. Another way of having is okay, chaos itself can have, a different failure card. We have a pod kill, we have a container kill, we have packet loss, we have latency spike, we have CPU stress, there's memory stress, RAM, ROM, and everything. Then there's zone down, then a disk is full. um, However, for the experiment to run in a loop, it has to be steady. So if I have to put a flow diagram for this particular stuff, it would be scanning, then it would be tracing, then is the experiment, and the fault has to be identified in real time, or rather, I'd rather say already identify at least 1,000 plus faults and train the model in a manner where there is no scope of failure. However, always there would be one situation where that can happen. That has to be grilled and trained on a regular basis. Analysis has to be done, and the tagging has to be done if failed. And failure is just a stepping stone to learn, because it's always important to learn from the mistakes. Make the mistakes fast. That is very important. You cannot be um, delving upon the data set and saying that, hey, mistake can be done at any given point of time. No, if you're trying to create that um, hyperloop, the mistake has to be very fast so that the losses are minimum. This is a very basic understanding of how the understanding of tech world is supposed to work. And when we talk about the automation always has to take into consideration the parameters which are changing. Automation cannot be based on, say, for example, 10 parameters, 20 parameters, 30 parameters. No. I would rather say, because of the environmental conditions which are changing at a very fast pace, it's important to have the parameters changed regularly. And to start with, let's do it in a multiple of 2. We cannot go with 369 because Tesla numbers have been misused in most of the protocols. Even the most layman person on this planet right now is talking about Tesla numbers just because they have read that book, which is a Tesla number book, 369, hold no value. Because there are a lot of applications right now where the owner of the app, I'm not naming the person or the entity or the enterprise, they are controlling the numbers in terms of the followers and everything. So when the data set itself is rigged, where the input data is rigged, come what may, the solution would never be achieved. So that has to be very, very clear. Then we have to have picking up a maintenance window cell site, which is low traffic, identify the low traffic zone. Now, this traffic has nothing to do with the land traffic. I have seen so many data sets whereby they are looking into the land traffic. It's nothing to do with the land traffic. We're trying to do another traffic understanding, which is nothing but the heat map. Then, of course, the chaos can be again color coded, and most of the algorithms are running at a percentage of 25, 50, and then 100. Very big fan or proponent of this. Audit has to be done. Audit has to be there. That is very, very important. We cannot miss the audit. I will talk about the classifications. I think once I talk about the classifications, there would be more clarity, and then we can just take things forward. And this is in discussion um, to the discussion which we were discussing past week. Um, so probably the testing, supervising, and monitoring of real traffic comes under the IPC of H0 4W24 slash not 8. Then we have slash 10, which is scheduling measurement reports, arrangement for measurement reports. Then for testing is not 6, testing, supervising, monitoring with simulated traffic. Now simulating data set, I'm like, synthetic data set is something I want to avoid at all cost at any given point of time. Handling of user complaints or trouble tickets, this is important. And the good thing would be, because even if the input data is wrong, the user is providing the age or the candidate is providing the age. If the candidate is doing something wrong, the candidate has to be provided that pop-up, the pop-up saying, hey, this is something which you have done wrong, recheck it. We need to have multiple ODPs. One good example could be the interface of Deutsche Bank, which is German based. uh, their protocol is a little bit different than the others in terms of logging in. It's so difficult that many times you feel that you're being traumatized just for the login purpose, but it's okay. That's how it works. Um, then for the maintenance and administration, we have H0 4L41 slash 16. Example, packet switching networks with machine learning and artificial intelligence. And for the artificial intelligence to be developed, we need to have the real intellect, real questionnaires to be answered. Perhaps there's no right or wrong answer. Every human being, let's not give it to human being, or rather just give. Right now, the word alien is very alienated. So let's use the aliens, because people even don't understand what Homo sapiens sapiens are supposed to be. So we can use that. And for the telegraphic communication, it is H04L, and everything comes under electricity. H stands for electricity. That doesn't mean that you just go to some H block and start coding stuff. I mean, on the GitHub itself, there is so much of garbage in terms of what their understanding of blockchain is. Just to finish this up, um, NFT has nothing to do with the quantity. People are selling stuff. Say, for example, particular individuals are selected, and then they push the ad whereby uh, you're buying, they're burning the coins per se, in terms of when you're paying the credit card statement. Because online economy also has some kind of value in terms of providing the input data. And perhaps because of that, the being pushed versus not purchased at any given point of time. Let's take that data set as minus 25, because if we have to go carbon negative, we have to select that data set. What can be carbon negative given the scheme of things? So we will go carbon negative with this aspect, whereby whatever is not being purchased, let's just take it as minus 25, because we need to maintain the entropy also, because the chaos is increasing, but something has to be done so that it can be pushed back, and somewhere we can create that peace between both the worlds. So that is something I wanted to talk about, because I have worked remotely for the longest time in my life, and perhaps because that's the way I have lived all my life in silos. So for me, it was very normal. Um, but for folks who have never lived in silos, who have always been, around multiple players, their life is different. But somebody who is accustomed to silos can live in a remote kind of environment. However, others who are, because Homo sapiens, I would rather say, I don't want to get into that aspect, because I just want to concentrate on this aspect and just do the coding and see if I just take that data set as minus 25 for being carbon negative, how good the data set comes along in terms of the cyber stuff, in terms of the algo which we are developing for the SGD codes, I think it will create an impact. It is already creating an impact. It's just that some use case studies have been reported. I'm also just compiling that and probably would be sharing it in a while. Thank you for watching this out. Have a great day ahead. And yes, um, the key here, key has nothing to do with blockchain key. The key here is basically an alignment of understanding the reality and the hallucinated data set. Most of the folks who are working online, creating these platforms, they are controlling the data set, which again is against the ethos. So I don't want to name anyone, but if somebody is intelligent enough, would be able to see that data set. Um, Thank you for watching out this video. I think this was quite interactive from my end. At least I could just put my 25 cent of understanding for the folks to understand, and they can work around it accordingly. Have a great week ahead. Festive season in India. So yeah, looking forward to it.